Welcome to the hottest real estate topics on the planet, keeping you up to date with all the creative ways to buy and sell real estate without bank qualifying, so anyone can build real income starting today. Here is another great show with Dealmaker Bill and Pete the Rookie.
All right, here we are at another episode of Flipping Houses for Rookies. Hey, Peter.
Morning, Bill. Morning, everybody. Good afternoon, evening, middle of the night, wherever the hell.
We're off our schedule to this week. So, anyways, here we are, podcast number 404. And the title for today's podcast is How to Properly Predict Creative Real Estate and You Easily. Here's a description. Are you trying to harness creative real estate skills and worry about how it will end up? Imagine if you could channel your future self to get everything you want, guaranteed. What would that do for your financial success and freedom? Believe it or not, there is an exact science, an exact easy science that can turn your predictions into profits. What secrets does your future creative real estate hold for you? Join us as we explore this simple idea and formula to unlock tomorrow's wealth and independence. Imagine what you could do if you had a secret edge on life, like some of those most successful people you know or heard of have and use. Done correctly, it is almost like having a crystal ball or a genie in a bottle giving you whatever you please. So if you are curious about the tools that could alleviate your real estate or any game, I'm going to give that to you again. If you could have, here we go. So if you are curious about the tools that could elevate, not alleviate, elevate your real estate or any game, this episode is a must listen. And if you actually do it, will absolutely change your life forever, regardless of your current state of affairs. Your journey to mastering a successful creative real estate future starts here. Just hit play or keep listening if you're already listening to us.
Okie doke.
Good?
Well, yeah, explain that one for us. Go ahead. Explain away.
All right, so basically we need to do a little bit of housekeeping here. Housekeeping. So normally we record this podcast on Thursday mornings, 9:30 a.m., and we live stream it to YouTube, to LinkedIn, and to Facebook. So if you would like to participate in the podcast, you can go there. Usually on a Thursday morning. Today it's Friday afternoon because I had something to do yesterday that was very important. And we changed it, but normally we're there. And you can go to any one of those platforms, just type in Flipping Houses for Rookies, and you will find us. And if you're with us 9:30 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time live, you can ask us questions as long as it's pertaining to the podcast. If you have any other questions, you can go to our little mastermind group, which has 100 and something people in it for free by downloading WhatsApp and looking for Let's Talk Real Estate, and you can get in that way. Or you can go to flippinghousesforrookies.com, and there's a support ticket up on the top right-hand side. And I usually go in there. I used to go in there every day, but I go in there 2 or 3 times a week now, and I respond to whatever questions you might have, or send them to Peter if they're for Peter. Okay? Make sure you subscribe to us wherever you're listening to us. Make sure you like us. Make sure you give us a review. And we'd be happy. Okay? So, let's get going. Ready, Pete?
Okie dokie. Lead away.
So, to be straight with everyone, I have been personally working on the inner me. Okay? And I'm at the end of my retreat. It's been about 7 months. I've been 100% working on me. I pushed life aside. I've been doing very minimal work tasks. Peter's been helping me and my family's been helping me, and this is something I've wanted to do for 25 plus years, right? And I've done it. I'm at the end now. I've finished it. In another week or so, I go home, and I have finished it. So I only disclose this in public because I have something that keeps popping up in my mind that was provoked from this retreat. Okay? And this odd thought or question just pushed me through some stuff that I want to share with you guys today. Because I think it's an undercut of anything that we have talked about to date. Okay?
So that's even more basic and more fundamental than some of the things we talk about usually, huh?
It undercuts all of that.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So here it is. In 2 years, this is the question. Remember I said I have this question that keeps gnawing at me, right? So I'm asking myself this question. You should ask yourself this question. Okay?
Yep.
In 2 years, in 5 years, in 10 years, hell, 20 years. Barring you're still alive, you don't die, obviously.
Oh, so that's the tricky first step. Don't die, huh?
Right.
All right. Put that on the list.
So in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years, I will have become someone, right? I mean, I'm someone now, but I'm 60, so did I know when I was 40 that I would become this person that I am right now? I'm going to become someone. I mean, I'm going to be here still existing. The question, so that goes inevitably, right? So in 2 years from now, I'm going to still be here and I'm going to be someone. The question that keeps tripping me, or I keep tripping over, is who will that future me be? Then it occurred to me. And a flash or a rush of information came over me. That the idea of long-term planning is relatively a new concept from a human evolution standpoint. It's not natural for humans to make long-term retirement plans. After all, until recently, like the last 50 years, humans didn't live that long.
It's true.
And when I mean live that long, I'm talking about living 30 plus years past your retirement.
Yeah.
That's not normal. I mean, I could tell you right now, I personally, about 5 years ago, was completely upset. Completely internally upset. I was pissed off.
Really?
Yeah. Here's the reason why. I had a father, obviously, and I had a mother, and they were decent parents. My dad worked a lot. He was never home. And there was a man that I met when I was about 9 years old. He lived 2 or 3 blocks down from us. I met him through my sister because his wife used to have these what they called tri-chem. they were tubes of paint, and they would paint on T-shirts and stuff like that with these patterns.
Yeah.
So I went down there with her while she was going to do this art class, and I met this guy named Jess, and he was out back and he was working on a car because he had a pretty big piece of land and he had a garage and a car. Anyways, I was curious and interested, which is just me. I get interested in things, and that led to a lifelong relationship. He was the guy that actually raised me. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the guy that kind of taught me he taught me about everything. Taught me how to fix cars. He taught me about women and drugs and school and just life things. He was 100% American Indian. So he was very much, about the land and, the sun and hunting and fishing. I actually grew up pretty much a hillbilly, right? And so I felt like I had this really good education that not a lot of kids like me got. Because we did electrical work, we did plumbing, we did odd jobs, we fixed cars. I mean, we did all kinds of things. We were he had a son who was a drug user, so I kind of replaced that son, if you would say that.
Yeah.
And so now here I am in my mid-50s and feeling like I had really good, solid base to build a life on.
Right.
I had already raised my family, and now here comes the upset. The upset is that nobody even hinted to or tried to attempt to teach me that I needed to take care of my parents as if they were children.
Yeah.
So I'm going along in life, and I'm planning my retirement, I'm planning my career, and I'm up and down with money. I'm a millionaire and I'm broke, and I'm a millionaire and I'm broke. I did that 3 times. Or multimillionaire broke, multimillionaire broke, multimillionaire. So now I'm I gotta reserve it. But now it starts with Jess. He has Alzheimer's. I had to take care of him or be part of taking care of him, even though I wasn't the family. There was 15 of his family members in a probate court, and I wasn't even there. I used to travel for a company consulting automotive repair shops for 6 years. I traveled 45 weeks a year, and I was at one of my events. And I got a phone call from the granddaughter, who was kind of like my sister, and she said, "You're not going to believe this." I'm like, "I believe anything." She said, "Everybody met," and she named all of them, 15, 16 people, all of his family in a probate court, and they unanimously voted that I should run his affairs because we were that close, right?
Yeah.
So for 2 years I had the medical. I mean, she did a lot of the work, but I made a lot of it. So I did that. I had just come off of the heels of doing this for my grandfather. My grandfather was only a couple months. He had emphysema, I think. They didn't know it though, and he would have delusions, or what do you call
hallucinations?
Hallucinations, yeah.
Really?
And so I had come off of that. So now here I am stuck with this, right? So I'm thinking, okay, whatever, So I kind of plow my way through it. Now my mom and dad live in Fort Myers, on Fort Myers Beach, and they lose their house. Then about a little while
that was the
after
hurricane.
The
hurricane.
Hurricane. Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't say that part.
Yeah, the hurricane.
On Fort Myers Beach, they lose their house, right? And now I'm taking care of them.
Yep.
So I'm thinking to myself that my training wasn't good. So I'm elaborating on this story because living 30 years past your retirement. I mean, my mom is 81. She lives in an assisted facility place. One of her friends that she has dinner with every night is 103.
Yo!
And they walk to the cafeteria together every night to get dinner.
Wow.
And it's a big facility. I mean, it's probably a half a mile.
Well,
Okay?
that's how you stay alive if you're 103. Keep walking. Keep moving.
Yeah. So I know I kind of went off on a little bit of a tangent there about my life, but I'm telling you that this is not a normal occurrence for humans recently.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You don't think about, it's not a natural thing. So this is why people struggle with retirement, is because we don't teach it in schools. We don't teach it to our kids. It's like this secret, right?
That's true. My parents lived into their 90s, so that was a pretty big stretch, and I had to take care of them. So I know what you mean.
So we're built or programmed genetically to like store food, right, for a few months. Maybe have a place to live for a couple of years. Leases are a year, 2 at the most.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, mortgages are longer, but like I said, maybe shelter for a couple of years, right? After that, even if you own property, after 2 or 3 years or 5 years by tops, the property starts to decay, right? You have to rebuild. You're constantly like trying to take care of things. So how do you set it up so that you can do that for 30 years after your income stabilizes, right? So to me, retire means working less because your body is less tolerant of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Your sleeping habits change, your food habits change, your energy changes, right? So when you're 40 years old, putting a new roof on the house is not a big deal. But when you're 80 years old, it's a big deal, right?
That's right.
Monetarily and physically, right? So when we're talking about having not just enough, but we're talking about having plenty. This is where it started with me, because I'm coming back from my retreat and I want to change my life. Right? I want to do more.
Yep.
Right? But how do you have plenty for 30 or 40 years in your retirement? Not just enough. I'm not talking about, if you need $1,500, that's all you make. No, I'm talking about if you need $1,500, you're making 10 grand.
No, you can't count on that because inflation and things that you don't expect to happen and cars break or whatever, you can't count on that.
So how do you have plenty when we become society's elders? It's actually a foreign or relatively foreign concept. Right? Then if you keep going with this interesting thought that I had, like add in the idea that we're very swayed and everything is happening in the present time, knocks off your future thoughts. In other words, present time is precedent. Present time takes over, right? And it makes it easy to live life or have life live you. Right? When you say, I'm going to live life, that means you're planning it, you're telling it what to do, you're telling where to go, what to do. But when life is living you, that means you're just drifting. And whatever thing comes along, you just gravitate to, subconsciously, and that becomes your thing, right?
That's true. Some people don't plan at all. They're quite not up to it, I think, to look into the future. And then some do, of course, because they're really worried about it. So they have the savings account from work or something. But is that going to be enough?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, my mom and dad retired, and she had a 401k with $103,000 in it or something like that, and they thought they were set.
Huh.
A few years later, 5 years later, they were that money was gone.
Mm.
Right.
Yep.
So you're trying to think of the future, which is an unnatural thing to do when you're really just trying to deal with the present time problems that you have, or life, or whatever's environment is pushing on you and stabbing at you and kicking you and throwing rocks at you. You're trying to deal with all that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So where does this nest egg thing come in? Right? So it's too easy to spend money right now and eat something that's delicious and feel rewarded now. It's too easy to buy a new car right now and feel rewarded. It's too easy to go out on Saturday night and have fun and feel rewarded. Right?
That's true.
Then to think about the future. I mean, life is a battle most often. Right? Lots of combat. Right? So why not have these rewards that are going on Saturday night? Going on vacation. Why not have them?
If you don't, and you're just trying to take care of the future, you're not having fun now. Right. And maybe you don't get to the future, you don't get to have that fun either. So there's probably a way to do both. But I'm listening very attentively to what you're saying, so please continue.
Okay. Oh, excuse me. After all, the present is very real and very powerful. The present pushes on us. The present does the most destructive thing that can happen to a human being.
Wow, what do you mean by that?
It steals attention units and imagination. Present time in the physical universe is not made to have imagination or to have sentient, in other words, feelings. It's not made to move unless something moves it. It's in other words, there's cells and molecules in a desk, right? And it's a living thing, but it will live if you put a desk in a room and went away for 300 years, that desk would still be in the room, exactly where you left it. Right?
Yep, true.
So it's not made the way we are. Right? So these thoughts, right? So these thoughts started provoking me to pull out of life. I've been 7 months. I've been like in a bubble. Other than doing the podcast with you and a few other things here and there. You know, I do a coaching call on Monday night, and I do 3 or 4 events a week, right? But I plug in and I unplug, right? So I've been pulled out of my life, right? And it just made me start thinking about these things. So the other day, these thoughts are going through my head, and I'm thinking to myself, I got to do something about this. And then I woke up the other morning thinking, son of a gun. I came down here for a month in October and decided to stay 7. I'm in Florida, live in Connecticut. So I had brought some stuff with me. I have a box that I took out of my office. So I'm like, I'm going to go through the box that I brought. There's some books in there. I think I'm going to need to read a book. I had read a few. I read while I was here. I've read like a dozen, like mystery novels, just to entertain myself, right? Mm-hmm. So I go through that book, and son of a gun, if I don't find a book that I bought probably 3 or 4 months prior to me coming down here 7 months ago, and this is not you may not believe me, but I found this after I had all these thoughts in my head. Usually it's the other way around. I read the book and they provoke the thoughts, but this time it didn't happen, right? And it was a book written by Benjamin Hardy, right? Called Be the Future Self Now. And I'm like, son of a gun. Now, I had probably not articulated that language so well in my head, but I'm thinking, this is all I can think about. It's like, what am I going to be, when I go home, I'm 60. Like, what am I going to do? You know, I mean, Pamela, who's my wife, is talking about, like, maybe moving, you know. She's talking about buying a house in Florida, and it's like, you know, I mean, she's been talking about this stuff, but I haven't been listening, and now all of a sudden I'm kind of like listening. Right? So what's it going to be like in a year from now, or 6 months from now, or, you know, with this new thought process that I have, this new way that I'm going to be, right? What's it going to be like? So I didn't read the entire book. I just flummed through it, read a few chapters. of Benjamin's book. But here's my point, and what I want to finish talking about today. How to properly predict creative real estate and you. In other words, how will you use it and what will it do for you easily? See, here's the thing. I'm connecting my thought or what I went through to creative real estate. You could connect this to anything you want, but I'm going to connect it to creative real estate. Mm-hmm. Honestly, what else on planet Earth can you create once? In other words, make a deal and have it give back to you for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 plus years. Where can you work on a deal for 5 or 10 hours? We'll say 10 to 20 hours and have that much return. I don't know what else you can do that with. There probably is other things. Now, maybe you could build a business for 20 years and it could sustain you for 20 years, but it's going to take you a long time to build that business. Mm-hmm. Maybe you can buy a business. I've never done that. That's already in place and just have it do that. Maybe that's another way. But I don't know where you can go with no money, very little education, and make more than a doctor or a lawyer fairly quick. So I'm going to take a few of Benjamin's concepts about the future you and work from there.
So did that book help answer questions for yourself?
It did, yes. There was a couple. I didn't read the whole book. I just read some chapters because I already had a pile of crap in my head already. So, by the way, this is the crystal ball that I was talking about and spoke about in the description, and the genie. Right?
Yeah.
So here we go. The first point that I needed to understand, which means you need to understand, and which is crucial to do, is when you think of yourself in the future, it has to be a different person than who you are right now. Right? Because if you thought of yourself, well, let me keep reading. So if for the only reason that you are someone in the future with a longer past that you claim to be his experience, but technically you're much more than that. So let me explain this. So if you're who you are today, let's say you're a person that makes $10 an hour, or say $20 an hour. Mm-hmm. And that's all you really know how to do, or that's all you thrive to do, and 2 years from now, you're still that same person, except just making, say, the current wage then is $25 an hour.
Right.
How is the future you going to help you? You're just doing the same old same thing. It's just it's a life continuum from where you are now, right?
Yeah, that's the kind of thing people complain about. Still doing this, still doing this.
So, thinking of the future you as a different person does not come naturally. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because most people think of their self or think of their future self as basically an extended same person you are today. But you have to see yourself as a different person.
Well, there's that old saying that if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, why would you expect things to be any different?
Right.
So if you want things to be different now, you can't be the same. You can't be the same and have and do the same and have anything be different. So you'd have to be something different. But you are what you're comfortable being.
Right.
Read
so,
on.
To your point, seeing yourself as a different person, you'll have a few things happen. So I've listed a few of the things that will happen. I have actually, looks like I've got 3 main things that will happen. So you will treat your future you differently than if it was just you. Right? You'll treat them like another person. The future you, if you mock up who you are as a different person, it's like you, like with me. Let me get a good example here. So, kind of like what you do with kids. You say, "Do as I say, not as I do." Right? So you don't want that. What you want is you want to respect this person. And I'm going to tell you why in a minute. But it's not you talking to you. It's you talking to a different entity or a different person.
So how do you get this other person? I thought you were going to talk more about that.
I am.
Okay.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is the future you. Let's say you go out 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're doing is it's kind of like, a lot of people talk about affirmation. The second thing that will happen is you'll respect this identity like someone you respect and want to be. Right? Like, I want to be, like my daddy. My daddy was blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, I'm not saying that you want to, it's some weird, yeah, we'll just leave it like that. Let me see if I can explain this better. So I have this weird concept that I use often.
Yeah.
Okay? And you know this. I've never said this to you, but you know this by my operating basis.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? I never take advice from someone I wouldn't want to trade places with or wouldn't want to be.
That's a good idea.
And you know that because I've told you, I don't want to be like them. Why would I want to take their advice?
Yeah.
And you know who those people are because I've named them. Like, they're telling me to do this and they're telling me that. It's like, I don't want to be like him. Why would I want to take his advice?
Yeah. Why would you listen to that person?
It's kind of like the old adage, if you want to be a millionaire, who do you talk to? Mm-hmm. Your uncle who's broke or the guy that made $10 million?
Yeah, well, I always used to ask my uncle about women because he knew so much. He'd been divorced 4 times, so he was really knowledgeable. Yeah.
That's not a good example, Peter.
Oh, sorry, folks. People do that, though.
So eventually you're going to have a relationship with this person. Like, why would you want to take advice from someone that you don't want to be or trade places with? So this future you should be someone that you want to replace and take advice from or want to be. Right? Like the future me won't criticize my wife anymore. The future me would be like, I'll be more tolerant with people. The future me will be a really good salesman. The future me will have $1 million. It can't just be all physical. It's got to be, the only way to have money is to have a product that's valuable to somebody else. So if I have a bottle of water, it's got to be a final product. So it's got to be a bottle of water. It's got to be a full bottle of water. It can't be a bottle without any water in it, or a bottle without a cap, or a bottle without a label. So it's a completed cycle of action.
Mm-hmm. All the parts are there.
And it's exchangeable to somebody else. In other words, somebody else is willing to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
So the more valuable final products that you have, the more money you have, because you're exchanging something for something. So if you don't have money, that means you don't have a good exchange with the outside world.
Mm.
And the more money you have, the more exchange you have. So money is the byproduct of exchange. Right? So when I'm saying be the future you, what I'm talking about is not the money. I'm talking about who are you? And what are you exchanging with the world?
Mm.
What are you exchanging with your family, with your friends and your circle of people you know? Right? Why is it that you have one or two friends that you just talk to and you don't talk like that with everybody else? Right? You talk to them for an hour or 2 hours sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You have coffee with them, or you have lunch, or some of us have cigars. And you spend time together, and you just kind of, you never really have an agenda, but you always have something to talk about. Why are just one or two of those people in your life? Why can't everybody be like that? I've talked about this in the past because you know this, Peter, because I keep referring to you by you know this, Peter, because I'm trying to prove to our listeners, which doesn't really do that, but that I'm not bullshitting. It's not just some whimsical thing. This has been in my head for a long time, because I have talked many years ago. In fact, on this podcast, I've talked about it. It's like I have actually, it's not morbid or anything, but I've actually at one point in my life visioned what my funeral would be like who would come to it. Would there be 3 people? And this only happens to me after I've been to a funeral, by the way.
Yeah,
right?
That'll prompt you to think about it.
Yeah, will there be a lot of people, or will there be a line down the door? I've been to both.
Yeah.
And you hear people say, oh, he this or she that, right? It's the finality of your life. It's now you're stepping back. And I read somewhere, I don't remember where, but I remember that most people on their deathbed don't talk about the money. They talk about the things they wish they had done. In other words, I wish I went to Alaska. I always wanted to go to Alaska. I wish I did that.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I had a better relationship with my daughter.
Yep. They talk about life, not the bucks.
Yeah. I wish I would have taken 7 months off to go on that retreat.
Yeah.
Right? All right, number 3, when you deeply care about another person, you aren't put out or put off by making sacrifices. Like time, energy, and resources to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But if you go from liking to loving this person, these will soon not be sacrifices and turn into investments and gratifications. And that only happens because right? When you love what you're investing in, it's not that hard, right? Like you buying a guitar, is that a sacrifice or is that an investment?
No, I was talking to a little student of mine the other day, and he didn't have time to practice because he's busy doing this and busy doing that. He said he has to be better at managing his time, and I said, you don't have trouble managing time when you want to eat, when you want to play video games, because those are things you like. You just do it because you like it. So what's a song that you like? But when you're looking at this person to compare that, you would have a future version of yourself, if I'm getting you right, that is the person you wish to be, and that's worth working towards. That's a great thing. So it'd be worth investing in, working towards, because that's a better version of who you are.
Right. And my second point is you become committed to what you invest in. So because now you're investing in it, now you become committed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And oh yeah, by the way, when you're invested in something and then you're committed to it, it has no choice but to grow. Right? Now, watch this very important natural phenomenon that occurs. This future you plants in your life a sort of an opinion leader that you will soon start to consult with.
And that's the future you, that opinion leader. You mean yourself.
When you create this future you, right? And I'm going to, this is all going to come together very soon here. When you create this future you, okay? And you go from the creation. So I was talking about, right? Making sacrifices for this new friend that you have, and then sooner or later you go from liking to loving this person, right? And then once you start loving this person, they're not sacrifices anymore; they're investments and gratifications. And then I talked about, well, when this future you. So now you have this love affair going on with this future you, just like it's a friend or a spouse or something like that, right? And when you love this, whatever you're investing in, which in this case is the future you become committed to and want to invest more. And because you're committing to and love this investment so much, right? This cause, right? It grows. Let's talk about the person that goes to the garden club. Oh, here's a perfect example. My son-in-law likes those. What are those little tiny trees called?
Bonsai.
Bonsai trees. Thank you. Yeah, you always know the right words. He goes to a bonsai club. And a bunch of men have these bonsai trees. Yeah, he loves bonsai trees.
I hadn't heard that one.
He's got a little bonsai farm going. But that's his passion. So he loves investing in it. So he'll buy the plants, right, or the trees, right. He becomes committed, right, and it becomes it's not an investment anymore. It's just gratification. Like, look at my bonsai tree. Right?
Yeah, it's not a chore. It's a joy.
Yeah, and no pun intended, but it grows. The plant, they grow, right? And I don't mean that the plants grow. I just mean that his passion grows. And next thing you know, he's got 2 of them, and then he's got 3 of them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because the trees hardly grow.
Yeah, exactly. Right? So what I'm saying is the natural phenomenon that occurs is the future you. The future just plants in your life this sort of opinion leader now, because you're constantly consulting. And here's the reason why, which means every time you need to make a major decision, I'm not talking about should I eat yogurt or not, unless the future you needs to lose 100 pounds, but which means each time you make a major decision, right, in present time, based on the environmental pressures, it'll come down to this, if you do this correctly. Will this distract and subtract from what my future me wants? Or will this add to and enhance what the future me wants? Which means decision making comes down to the greatest good for the greatest number involved. See how simple it could be?
You know, I'm understanding what you're saying, but it's almost hard for even me to try to figure out how to do that. But the easiest example I can think of is a 5 or 10-year-old kid knowing he's just a kid, but someday he's going to have a job, and he's going to have a car, and he can get a girlfriend, and he can, buy. So that's like a future version of himself. So that one's actually easy to think of, right?
Right.
Because you do that as a kid. You're not going to stay a kid. You're going to grow up, and all this stuff is going to happen. But then when you grow up, you figure, I'm done. I grew. But you're talking about, in spite of that, you can continue to create a different, better version of yourself. And people say, like, I don't like this about myself. You don't think about that much because it's annoying. But I don't like this about myself. Well, envision yourself like here's how I'm trying to think. Cause I'm still waiting for you to tell me how to be the new guy. But I'm thinking, like, there's parts of yourself that you like, so you don't want to lose that. There's things like, I wish I wasn't like that. Well, maybe it can develop not being like that and be like this, because I want to be like that more. I wish I could, etc. And then you start seeing the possibility of somehow getting there and something to work
So I know
towards.
I'm doing a good job with the podcast, because the next thing is, all right, before we end off, let's talk about the future you, this different person.
Well, yeah, that's the whole point. Like, you got to tell us how to do that piece. I'm
I
conjuring
don't know
up
how to
myself.
do it, but I'll tell you what I do. So
Yeah.
first, think of this. Failing as the future you is a lot better than succeeding as the current you.
Mm-hmm.
Failing as the future you is a lot better than succeeding as the current you. Grant Cardone wrote this book, the 10X Rule.
Yeah.
If you're going to think about making money, why would you want to say, I want to make $100,000 at the end of the year, when you could just change your thought and say, I want to make $1 million?
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't make $1 million and you make $450,000 or $650,000, that's better than making $100,000. Where if you only thought of $100,000, you might have only made $65,000.
That's right.
So thinking big is important.
Mm.
Which is why I say this. This is actually a Dan Sullivan, who's a strategic coach. Him and Ben work together. I got this from him probably about 2 years ago, right? The natural law is your future should always be bigger than your past. Only because things are either shrinking or growing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And growing is the only true survival, or expansion is the only true survival for any living thing. Even if you're staying stagnant and it's like, I make $100,000 a year, $100,000 a year, $100,000 a year. So this is a perfect example of this. If you made $100,000 a year in 2020 and then lived through the economy the way it's been with all inflation and make that same $100,000 a year in 2024, I promise you your life is different. You went from having enough money and being comfortable to like now not having enough money to pay everything.
Yep. Yeah, things grew up around you and you wind up smaller.
Right. So when done this way, making sure your future is bigger than your past, you will sufficiently guide you yourself, right? Like the crystal ball or the genie in the bottle. Plus, you now have benchmarks to measure success and defeat.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because you're looking like, am I heading towards the future of me, or am I off the rails?
Yeah.
Right?
Are you making progress?
Mm-hmm. Or more importantly, you could take a look at the condition you're in, or the state that you're in, the state of who you're being.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And now you could respond quickly because now you have so statistics. What are statistics? You look at the stock market, they have these statistics, these graphs of money, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is a statistic? What is the definition of a statistic? Right?
Well, what's funny about the stock market is they don't tell you what the number is. They tell you the change. It's up this much, it's down this much. So a statistic is a comparison, like how are we doing now compared to before? Are we getting there or we're not getting there? Are we getting bigger or are we getting smaller? So they tell you like a number change.
Right. So that's right. So what a statistic then is, based on what you just said, is it's a condition of where you're at or how you're operating compared to something another time. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of common that the statistics go backwards, right? Like, so today's Thursday. What was my statistic on last Monday? Mm-hmm. But what if you inverted that or flipped it around and said, well, what's my statistic going to be next Monday? We use statistics for the past instead of the future, right? It's actually kind of funny to me because most want to have a tensionless state. No tension.
Oh, what's the fun in that?
So I don't know if I'm going to do this any justice, and I'm going to come back to this in a second and really slam dunk this for you guys, okay? Mm-hmm. But I learned something extremely valuable about 2 months ago in my stuff I've been doing. And I actually told it to you on the podcast, but I think I said it backwards.
Really?
So, yeah, I told you happiness was an emotional state. It's incorrect. Happiness is not an emotional state. Mm-hmm. Happiness is the effect of interest. Happiness comes from how interested you are or aren't in a thing. Interest is the key to life. For me.
No, I think you're right. I mean, think of a kid. Look, Mommy, look at that. Oh, look at this. And look at some old person or somebody who's just in a bad way. They don't have interest. They actually define depression as no interest. I've seen that. You know, yep. Do you lack interest in things? It means you're just sitting there like a lump with nothing to draw you forward. So,
my mother's 81 years old. My dad passed away a year and a half ago. Yeah. Or a year and several months or so, whatever. A year and a half ago. Yeah. And she, other than watching TV, her interest is to sit in her room quietly, watch TV. Wow. So when you, and that's a whole nother podcast, and I don't want to get into that, but interest. What are you interested in? What are you not interested in? What do you want to be interested in? Mm-hmm. Interest is it's something new for me. I've done it all my life. That's why I've gotten where I am. I'm interested in getting this done so I could do that. Mm-hmm. I'm interested in my buddy Jay, our buddy Jay.
Yeah.
He tells me multiple times, a month sometimes, you're so lucky. Hey, yeah, why is that? You have this passion for real estate. You just love it. I wish I had something I was passionate about or something I was interested in.
Yeah, he says the same thing to me. I mean, the job he has is something that he picked because it could make money for him. It's nothing that he's excited about. It's a job. Better than what he had, makes more money, but it's not like he actually wanted to build guitars at one point. But I didn't say anything, but it's kind of hard to make money doing that. Yeah. So he has a job, but yeah, it's not the same as having something you're interested in. How many people have a job they're really interested in or just got to go because they got to make the money?
Right.
Very few people enjoy their jobs.
So like I said, it's like people want this tensionless or stress-free state, right? Like they're on vacation all the time, right?
If you don't have something you're interested in, I would want that. But if you have something you're interested in that you care about, you don't mind that.
Right.
Isn't that interesting? I just kind of dawned on me. You have something when you really like, we gotta build this house, we gotta build this business, or we gotta put a garden in, or any old thing. Let's go on vacation, and Listen, renovate anything, you will not worry about the little discomforts because you know something good has happened.
This solves the mystery of why retired people that live to 100 live so long, because they say, the guy that's still working at 80 years old, why is he working? He doesn't need any money. Or the guy that dies at age 65 because he retired at age 60 and sat there and watched TV.
Yep. My cousin worked at insurance, and they gave their staff a free weekend of retirement training. And people would come back, half would say they loved it, half would say they hated it. And he couldn't understand how that could be. So one day he went himself, and the guy in charge would ask people, so what are you going to do when you retire? One guy, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, crossing guard, to take time with my kids, take a trip. And he'd ask the next guy, like, what are you going to do? Like, what's there to do? Right. There's nothing to do. Watch TV, I don't know. And my dad was still working at 83, and he ran into the 65-year-old friend. We said, hey, what you doing? Like, nothing, kind of stay home, watch TV. And that guy probably died quick because my dad would go on vacation, he'd go to the casino, he'd go golfing. He lived 94. So, yeah, it's absolutely true. Interest is really important, Bill. You got a good point there.
When true happiness is discharging, it's discharging. True happiness is discharging the tension by adding a wanted purpose full of passion, which is the interest.
Yep.
Right?
That's
Which brings me...
That's what I just kind of realized as you were saying that. And you just kind of defined it, but yeah.
Which brings me to my final and most important part for today.
Mm-hmm.
How?
No. Yeah, don't forget that part.
Yeah. This little drill is done. This little drill done is the guarantee it all happens. Just like you would do work for 5 or 10 hours in a piece of real estate, and it just keeps giving back and giving back and giving back.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This is the hour or two spent that will just keep giving back and giving back and giving back. Here it is. Ready?
I'm ready. Should we write this down?
Nope. It's too simple.
Okay, good.
It's simplistic, but not simple to do. My new saying.
Okay, I know what you mean.
Write a letter from the future you to the present you.
Oh, God.
Talk about the things you have overcome and went through to become the future you. Benjamin says to keep this to 2 pages, no more than 2 pages, and only about 10 minutes writing time. Also, realize these letters are working drafts of your future. As you expand, because I'm telling you, your future should be bigger than your past. So as you expand, you're going to get new ideas and new things are going to happen, right? You change as you expand. Hopefully, you get bigger. So I'm rereading that stuff. You change your letters.
Yeah.
Also, choose a timeline.
Mm-hmm.
Like write one letter for 2 years and another letter for 5 years, one for 10 years, one for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
You'll probably notice a pattern as you do it. Each promising the present you of how you will turn out and actually be. If you just come to England and do this with me, I promise you this is what will happen. If you just come on vacation with me, I promise we'll do that. If you just read this book, you'll figure that out. If you just invest $250 a month when you're 29 years old, aka Emma, and the conversation I had with her, you'll be a multimillionaire by the time you're 65. It's promises. Each of these promises you're giving to your present time self as you're writing these letters. Right? So I know we're at the end and I have two more things I want to say, but I'm going to put in a little excerpt here.
Mm-hmm.
I figured out some time ago, several weeks ago, what our election is all about in 2024 in the United States.
Well, you're going there with this one, huh?
We are in a very unique election. In fact, I would suffice to say that I don't think it's ever happened in history.
Mm-hmm.
Because here's what we are electing. We are not electing men. We are electing the word just came from my head. Hang on. Resumes.
The resumes. Oh, yeah.
Both presidents, or soon to be both presidents or electoral presidents, have resumes. So which resume do you like or don't you like?
Yeah, you really compare. You know, one of the trouble is when you're electing somebody, you're electing it based on what they're promising to do. Like, that's no good. They'll say whatever to get elected. But you should look at the record, and they both had records as presidents, not as something else, a senator, a businessman, or...
I don't think there's ever been a time in history where that's happened. I mean, I think ex-President Trump was president for 4 years and then didn't get elected and lost for 4 years and now is being reelected. I don't know if that's ever happened. Maybe it has. I've never looked, but I think it's unique that both presidents have been presidents for 4 years and both presidents have resumes of what they did in those 4 years. So it doesn't, you as a voter actually have facts of what happened. It's not, like you said, it's not a promise to appear.
Exactly. It's not based on I'm going to. It's like, I did. Did you like it or not? Here's what I did. Here's what I did. Which one did you like?
Dealing with this future you is kind of the same thing. You have a resume. You know that taking advice from this future you, who is now you're going to become your opinion leader, is not just giving you advice because of their personality. It's like my wife giving me advice about how to buy a piece of real estate. I tell her, don't even talk to me because until you've bought a few hundred houses, you have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Or me giving her advice on how to consult a chiropractor or a dentist or whatever, a chiropractor. Her advice, she's amazing at it. She does these strategic plans. I've run into people when I'm down here on my retreat and tell me about how she's changed their lives, how they haven't been in the office for 4 months because she put them into a phase 2 where they don't have to go in the office in phase 1 anymore.
Wow.
And they tell me these stories about all the money they made because she helped them. By doing what I talk about today, which is promising the present you how you will turn out in the actual future and how you will be, your subconscious mind will now go to work for you, especially if you read the letters often. Like a love letter with a military person that went overseas and is in battle in a war. How many of those stories have we seen? They got the love letter in their helmet or wherever, and when they're down and out, they read the love letter from the girl usually, right? The beautiful girl.
That's right. And they make damn sure they stay alive so they can get back to her.
Yeah. Remember, Albert Einstein once said, this is my parting words, imagination is more important than knowledge. Albert Einstein once said, imagination is more important than knowledge. It's better to let the future drive life than the unplanned present time drive you. It's better to drive a car looking out the windshield than looking in the rearview mirror.
Ah, yeah. It's really hard to drive when the windshield frosts over, right?
Mm-hmm. So the trick is to write a letter to yourself from the future you from 2 years or 5 years or 10 years. If you want to just test it, do future you next month. No more than 2 pages in 10 minutes. That's what Benjamin says in his book. Okay, so I put a link in the chat that gives you a guide on how to do all this. So in the description where you saw this podcast, there's a link. Go click on it and you can get the guide. I hope you enjoyed our profound...
That's very profound.
...deep dive today, but this is at the end of my my little retreat here, and I'm going to dive back into the real world and get all the exciting things I've not had because I've been in my bubble. And I thought I would take the time to expound upon how I feel and what I've been going through before I go dive into the deep end again. So I hope you...
It's a good idea.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed today. I didn't do it to be a popular podcast. I actually did it so the future me can come back and listen to it. So make sure you subscribe to us wherever you're watching us or listening to us. Make sure you like us wherever you're watching or listening to us. Make sure you leave a comment wherever you're watching or listening to us. If you want to join us next week, which is on a Thursday, we will be there at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can go to Facebook. You can go to YouTube. You can go to LinkedIn and just type in Flipping Houses for Rookies. And if you have any questions or you want a bunch of free stuff, go to Flipping Houses for Rookies. Okay? So thanks for listening, and we are over and out, and talk to you on episode number 405. Flourish and prosper.
Thanks for tuning in to the hottest real estate topics on the planet with Bill and Pete. If you want to continue learning how to buy and sell real estate without money or credit, head over to flippinghouses.club for some cutting-edge real estate wealth tools. Or contact us at info@flippinghouses.club.